Audio Yeti. Yeah, it should be working. There we go. All right, that's cool. So I'm gonna watch. I'm still working on the environment. I'm gonna watch two two news type things. Yeah. Anyway, sorry if this isn't of interest to you.
Now let me tell you why Kentucky and Oregon matter. So Kentucky and Oregon don't have enough delegates to make a big enough dent in Hillary Clinton's lead. So whether Bernie Sanders, right now, he's barely winning with 95% reporting in Kentucky, and he's got a lead in the polls in Oregon, whether he wins them by a little bit or loses them by a little bit, in terms of the delegate math, is almost entirely irrelevant, right? Because he's got to win the rest of the 66% of the rest of the pledged delegates to have more pledged delegates, leaving the superdelegates aside. But now people are saying, wait a minute, Hillary really doesn't have any momentum, right? So Bernie Sanders has won a lot of the elections in the later rounds, right? Now, obviously, she's leading, so she won plenty of the elections beforehand, but she's losing momentum as we're going forward here. And now, if Bernie Sanders wins both Kentucky, even if it's by a little bit, and Oregon, probably he'll win it somewhat convincingly. Well, here she goes again. I mean, the media's been telling us it's over, it's over, it's over. But if it's so over, why does Bernie Sanders keep winning?
Really fast point there. They tried last time this happened, the last cycle. They were like, "Oh well, it's just Trump's voters voting for it." These are closed primaries tonight.
Yes.
Yeah.
And by the way,
no Trump voters are making Kentucky go for Bernie.
And by the way, that was the whole thing about how Bernie Sanders won West Virginia, because 44% of his voters would actually vote for Trump in the general election and not Bernie Sanders. Was a lie. Okay. Now, the people who quoted that, some of them made an honest mistake, in my opinion, and they didn't mean to lie. But if you read that poll, first of all, it should have been a red flag for you guys. Are you kidding me? Really? 44% of the people that voted for Bernie Sanders did it as some sort of political trick. Instead of voting for Trump, who was on the ballot, they went and voted for Bernie Sanders instead. That your antenna should have gone up if you're a reporter. Go, what? No, that's way too large an number. So you know what the actual thing was? I looked into it after reading those stories. No, 44% said that if Bernie Sanders is not in the general election, they would vote for Trump over Hillary Clinton. Okay? So now that is an interesting number and one that should cause concern for the Clinton camp. But that is not their Donald Trump supporters, and they're trying to trick people, and hence they voted for Bernie, and they'd vote for Trump over Bernie, which is how it was reported. Right. God damn it, like it's over and over and over again, right? So, but the press ran with it. They were all just Trump voters. That win in West Virginia didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But all of a sudden, but I even saw it in the press today. There was even one article saying, like, is Hillary really going to lose Kentucky and Oregon? This is not a good sign.
Kentucky, which I'm going to check how much she won by.
Remember, Arkansas is one of her 18 home states, right? And so...
Like how Kentucky's your fifth.
Right, exactly. Right?
Yeah, Hillary won
the South,
65 to 29, 65 to 30
in
2008.
In 2008, that's how much she won Kentucky by.
This time she won by 0.5.
She won it by that large a margin in 2008.
Pretty much a tie.
She is, tied at this point, losing by a little bit to Bernie Sanders in a race that TV keeps telling us was over many weeks ago.
Yep.
So, yeah, it matters. It matters because the final argument, if Bernie Sanders is going to have any chance at all, the final argument he's going to make is twofold. One, he's going to make a very aggressive case in California where there is over 500 delegates. It is by far the largest state. That is a ton of delegates in California. He's going to go there and say, she hasn't won anything in over a month. She has no momentum, even though she declared herself the winner. Even though all of TV said she was the winner, she's got no momentum at all. She keeps losing every state, right? And she has an FBI investigator. I don't know if they're too calm, they're too soft to make that argument.
They're definitely not going to mention the FBI investigation. They're just not. And I would actually
drives me crazy because if
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders had an FBI investigation on him, they would have eliminated him on day one.
He'd be gone.
On day one, Ned Stark would have taken out the sword and be like, "Bam, you're done. I'm done with you." Okay. So instead,
If they found inconsistencies in his OkCupid profile, they would have told him to drop out. by
that's
now.
right. Instead of that, he's Jon Snow, and he keeps going. And he did it in West Virginia. It looks like tonight he might do it in Kentucky. He's likely to do it in Oregon. And all these states that he keeps winning. Indiana, win after win after win, right? Again, be fair, Hillary Clinton has more wins. That's why she's got more pledged delegates now. But the case he's going to make, one to California, hey, look, you got to come with me, right? And two, at the convention, because neither side is going to have enough pledged delegates to win. Even if things go as they are, and Hillary Clinton has a big size pledged delegate lead, it is not a majority.
Yeah.
15% of the delegates are super delegates, okay? So based on how the polling is going and the voting is going so far, the super delegates will decide the race. So Bernie can go to the primary and go into the convention and go, hey, listen, she might have, let's say, 150 more pledged delegates more than me, right? But I won the last 7 out of races. I won California. I picked up, however many delegates I picked up in California, 85, 115, whatever it is that he picks up, although those would be large numbers, right? And there, I don't know if anyone will actually run an actual tough campaign on the Bernie team and go, she's under federal investigation. And by the way, now all the polls show her in a statistical tie with Trump. The first one, they said, oh, ignore it. It's just an outlier. Now, another one came out, NBC News today. She's up 3 points within the margin of error. Statistical tie in Ohio, in Florida, in Pennsylvania, okay? She's going to lose. Super delegates, this is your job. Your job is to switch over and vote for the more electable candidate. Now, is that going to work? As things stand now, I would be shocked beyond imagination if the super delegates that love this establishment switch over to Bernie Sanders to vote against Hillary Clinton, okay? But the only wild card, in my opinion, is if the indictment comes down and he won 7
Joe
out of the last 8
Biden.
states and she's doing miserably in the polling, then we're having a conversation. And that's a real conversation. And that happens at the convention. That's why it's not over. If there was no indictment hanging over our head, and by the way, the FBI says any day now, any day, right? And they said it is not a special inquiry, it is an investigation. James Comey said, investigation is in our title. It's the Federal Bureau of Investigations. That's
No,
what
I think it's inquiries.
Okay. So the
Sorry,
Bernie
I
camp
gotta stop
manually
laughing.
won't tell you this, but we will. And if there was no indictment, by the way, I would say, guys, wrap it up. He's not going to catch her on pledged delegates, and the super delegates are not going to flip. He's lost the election. But that indictment does hang there. It can make all the difference. That's why winning in Kentucky and Oregon could be relevant. Bernie Sanders tonight won the great state of Oregon. It's been called by everybody as we're doing this live. It looks like he's up 6 points right now with 60% reporting, but it has been called by everyone, including TYT. Now, in terms of Kentucky, the Cenk Uygur rule is if it's within 0.5, if your person wins or loses, that is in reality a tie.
Oh, it is a tie.
Day one, literally from Iowa on, and I said during that coverage, if Bernie wins by 0.5, it's a tie, and he wound up losing by 0.2 in Iowa, I believe. That's a statistical tie. In the case of Kentucky, it looked like at 99% reporting, Hillary Clinton was going to win by 1 point, and I said live as we were doing the show, that is a win, okay? So you can't call that a tie. That's not within 0.5. 1 point is 1 point. It's a win. Now, as it turned out, afterwards, they took some counties off. They put them back on. And at the end of the day, she won by 0.5. Sorry, Cenk rule. That's a tie. Okay? And so I'm not making it up afterwards. If you're watching live coverage, I know that the whole coverage this time was just for members, but the members saw it. and you could become a member too. tytnetwork.com/join. If you're watching this,
I'm correcting my post.
Although that would be a little ironic, but I think we might put 1 or 2 clips up on YouTube. Anyways, okay, but get the whole thing when you can, and we put up our coverage afterwards as well, so you can watch it on demand. Anyways, so we got a tie in Kentucky, and we've got a win in Oregon for Bernie Sanders. But if you want to call Kentucky a small win for Hillary, I got you. I'm not sweating that detail, right? So realistically, this is not nearly enough delegates for Bernie Sanders. You got to keep it real on that. He needed to win 66% of the delegates going forward. He didn't win 66% in Oregon, the state that he won. He only won by 6 points, let alone in Kentucky, where I just told you what happened, right? On the other hand, it would have been nice if Bernie Sanders had won by around 1 point in Kentucky, because then he could make the argument, I won in Indiana, I won in West Virginia, I won in Kentucky, I won in Oregon. My gosh, she's got no momentum whatsoever. Here, at least Hillary Clinton gets to say, well, I won,
I have a notification.
By the way, as we've been saying throughout, she's won many states before that, right? So I think in terms of optics,
Think. What am I doing? What am I doing?
A sigh of relief on being able to say she won Kentucky tonight. In terms of delegate count, every race that Bernie Sanders doesn't win in a crushing style is a sigh of relief for Hillary Clinton, because he's running out of time and he's running out of space. Okay, so those are real. But I also want to talk about how he gave a great energetic speech tonight, and man, that guy does not give up. And I know that some people in the media are annoyed by that. Some people certainly in the Clinton camp are annoyed by that. A lot of people in the Democratic Party establishment are annoyed by that. But as I look at it, and he looks just as fired up as he did on day one, and he's talking about all the economic injustices that we're going to correct. He gets
there we go. Okay.
Details of how we're going to do criminal justice reform, and we're going to liberate people in every way imaginable. And here on the show, we were talking about how, my God, imagine if he stopped imprisoning hundreds of thousands of people who were just in there on marijuana charges. Well, forget the guys who are already in prison. If he just stopped arresting people for marijuana possession, and all the economic good that could do, let alone
here we go.
that it brings.
We want this to be 800.
And the crowd was roaring as always.
Okay,
Let's
so
go.
let me jump in,
Whoa.
because I love that you
What?
did it to a speech, because I think that's important. So you mentioned the reality of the numbers, and look, there's still
That's
a
not what I wanted.
small possibility that he can win the nomination, but we got to keep it real, right? It's becoming increasingly difficult for him to do so, especially since he needed to win at least 65% of the vote moving forward, and unfortunately that didn't happen in Kentucky tonight. But I will say this, it's important for him to stay in the race, regardless of what the establishment says, regardless of the fear-mongering you hear from the Hillary campaign, indicating that if he doesn't drop off or drop out, Trump's going to win, he's helping Trump, whatever. All that stuff should be brushed to the side, because right now what Bernie Sanders is providing is a voice for the disenfranchised and for the poor. You don't hear lengthy speeches where politicians are specifically mentioning these individuals and how they want to help them, specifically raising awareness about issues like income inequality, political corruption, climate change, prescription drug manufacturers taking advantage of us. These are issues that we should be educated about through our media, but we don't even get that.
That's
For
bad.
the most part, right?
Yep.
Of course, with independent media, you get that. But I love that, he has a voice. He's getting through to people, and what he's providing for those who have been disenfranchised is so much more valuable than anything else that could come out of this election.
He even talks about Native Americans when there's almost no votes to get there, right? But he doesn't talk about it because he cares about the votes. He talks about it because he cares about the justice of being able to serve that community. That's why you never hear any other politician talking about it. They're like, what's in it for me? Native Americans don't vote enough for me, right? Well, but it's not about him. His slogan isn't, I'm with him.
Yeah. The only other politician who brings up Native Americans is Donald Trump, and only to attack Elizabeth Warren's ancestry.
That's right.
So look, the numbers don't look good. Obviously, like somebody tweeted me earlier today, like, oh, it makes me sad that they seem to be losing hope. And I get what you're saying. I personally believe, and this is just me because I strive to be a robot. Hope is like an emotional state that I have in the absence of information, and gradually, as I gather information, I replace the emotion with facts. But that doesn't change that obviously still support him, loved his speech, and there is still a path. It's not necessarily a delegate path, although that's not impossible. It's just extremely unlikely. We're going to talk about the numbers soon. Even in California, it's not looking great, and he has to destroy in California. But it's still not impossible. And in 2 months, when they're at that convention, look, Trump is not going to become drastically more popular because as he talks more, people hate him. He's a crazy person. But there's Hillary. I don't see her drastically raising her favorables with the population, especially with the way that we know she's going to campaign. It's 100% anti-populist, especially in comparison to Donald Trump. And so that combined with the way Bernie is already polling, and I saw on CNN they're messing with the map and they're trying to figure out how to get to 270 for everybody. Like, forget all of those manipulations. Bernie Sanders, we saw today, is beating Trump in Georgia. You could blow that entire map away with Bernie Sanders. And the lie that he hasn't been attacked, he's already been criticized in the most disingenuous and ridiculous ways on a daily basis for months now. He's the guy. He's the guy that can beat Trump. He's the guy that can easily win the presidency.
So Johnny Pie has a lot of nicknames, but we might have to add Spock to that. Spock Iderola. For this sentence alone, I wrote it down. Hope is an emotional state in the absence of information.
Wow, that was very eloquent.
Well, yes, but it's also kind of creepy in
It's
how
so
robotic it is.
Yeah, totally. And
No,
most
I
people would
like
be
it.
like, you should have both, and that's why my therapist criticized me for, like, express your emotions, man. I get that. But
See, he is Spock.
You have a therapist?
Well,
this is back in the day.
okay, all right. Well, it largely worked.
It didn't stick.
Hold on, but let me respond a little bit to that because, like, we do get it from, avid Bernie supporters. And here's the thing. We're not here to lie to you guys to make you get better. We're here to tell you the truth, okay? And honestly, some of the truth sucks, and it sucks for us. And a lot of times I've left the show feeling very deflated and terrible that, the primaries didn't work out as well as they should have for Bernie Sanders. At the same time, I'm not going to feed you guys misinformation to make you feel better. And if that offends you, well, you're going to be offended a lot because it's just the way it goes.
The mainstream media lies to you.
Yeah.
Like, everybody says that they like us because we're real.
Yeah.
That's what real is. It doesn't just mean real when it's cool or real when it's fun. It's real when it kind of sucks. But the suck isn't the end. There's stuff after the suck.
What the hell?
You don't just get to keep it real when it's convenient.
Yeah.
Right? That's not what it means. But I'm a half full guy, right? So hopefully
The suck.
state in the abundance of information. So let me give you a little bit of that hope. Now it might not be in the electoral sense that you're looking for, but number one, Bernie Sanders has won on the issue of the minimum wage. Before we were having a conversation of whether it should go from $7.25 to like, oh my God, $9. People were flirting with. Somebody said 10. It was like, wow, that was just like 2 years ago, right? Now he moved the goalpost all the way to 15. Then Hillary Clinton had to try to catch up and she got to 12. And then just about a month ago, she's bragging in New York when they passed it at 15, as if she had the idea for $15 minimum wage. No. Bernie Sanders had that idea, and even if he loses electorally, he won on that policy. I remember with Bernie Sanders, when I interviewed him here on the Young Turks, and I asked him, hey, in the situation where you don't win, what is it that you want? And he immediately gave a list of policies that he wanted. There was no talk of like, hey, maybe I could be VP, there's a cabinet. I know that he wouldn't, like any reasonable politician wouldn't say, all right, I'll take Secretary of Treasury and we'll call it a day. Of course not. But they would have intimated it, and their answer would have been around that rather than around, here are the policies I want for the American people, right? Which is what he listed. And he already got one of them in terms of the minimum wage in all those different cities that he listed in his speech today, right? In Seattle, LA, New York, and all these different places. It is already $15. It's already won, right? And that's just getting...
What the hell?
In my lifetime, I was telling these guys as we're doing the show live, I never saw a politician say that the business model of Wall Street is fraud.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't negotiate with the banks. We shouldn't regulate the big banks as they are today. We should break up the big banks. That is amazing. And now you've got Hillary Clinton taking $15 million just in the last quarter from the big banks, as again Senator Sanders pointed out tonight in his speech. at least pretending that, I'd break up the big banks too. I mean, if the situation was right, I'd break them up.
Even though money doesn't affect politics, and it's totally fine. They're cool.
Of course. He moved the conversation. And by the way, right now, all that talk like he's got to get out, he's hurting Hillary. No, you don't get it, you schmuck. CNN just ran, even CNN, now that Donald Trump doesn't have his empty podium anymore since he's already won, they ran about half an hour at least of Bernie Sanders' speech. That's free media for the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And in most of that speech, he attacked Donald Trump. You've got a situation here where it's 2 against 1 in attacking Donald Trump. That's not a bad thing. That's a great thing, right? And then finally, you want to talk about winning. He's won the future. He wins in every demographic under the age of 45. I know what the mainstream media say. They say, oh, those young kids, they'll get jaded just like we did. And then they'll give up all these dreams and hopes and revolution and making things better. Things don't get better, okay?
How do you
swallow that bitter pill like we did, right? I don't think so.
Yeah, and it's not just the bitter pill, Cenk. What they fail to understand, 2 things that are different about our generation compared to older generations. Number one, the country has moved so extremely to the right that to expect liberals today to become even more conservative in the future, I think is ridiculous. Like, I have actually gotten more liberal as I've grown older. The paradigm has shifted politically in the country, right? We've become very right-wing. But also at the same time, the reason why people become more conservative as they age is because they attain more wealth, right? Older generations were able to do that. And right now, the millennial generation is having a very difficult time getting on its feet because of the terrible economy we've inherited, right? And we have the issue of student loan debt, which is huge, okay? At this point, it's surpassed credit card debt. It's past $1 trillion. That's how much students owe in student loan debt in the country right now. And so, yeah, the system is rigged against us. And to think that we're just going to not only accept that system, but fight for it is ridiculous. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, so I think they have a fundamental miscalculation. So when Anna says the country's moved right, what we mean is that the political establishment has moved right. So a lot of Barack Obama's positions today are actually way to the right of Ronald Reagan's positions.
Okay,
Republicans are always crying about amnesty. You know,
Blender,
amnesty.
follow, path.
And by the way, that was not like something they called amnesty. It was amnesty. It said everybody that's here illegally, okay, you now have amnesty and you all get to stay here. And back then, they were like, wow, what a right-winger Ronald Reagan is. Now that's a left-wing position.
Yes.
Right? So politically, the country's moved right. But in terms of the actual people, the polling indicates the country is significantly center-left and moving further left because the younger generation is more progressive than any generation we've ever had since we've been doing polling. Yeah. And not by a little, but by a lot. And so the miscalculation that the establishment press has, because they are the establishment, is they think, no, we're always going to win. It's always going to be the status quo. No, look at what happened on the right-wing side with Trump. Look at what's happening on the left-wing side with Bernie Sanders. The jig is up. They're on to you. Politicians are not serving them. They're serving their donors. Everybody's sick of the establishment. There's a revolution afoot, and that tsunami is definitely coming. And so Bernie Sanders is the best representation of that. So even if he loses electorally, and that's not over yet, and there's California's the biggest state, and we're going to do our part, and we're going to vote, and we don't get swayed by who's winning and who we think is going to be on the winning team. We vote based on policies, right? But even if he loses electorally, his idea and his message is almost bound for victory. That victory is almost inevitable. I believe electorally it will almost certainly happen in the next election.
Doesn't make sense.
What's much more important to me, and I think to the country, is actually fixing the system. And one of the ways that you do that is you get an amendment to get money out of politics. Bernie Sanders is constantly talking about public financing of elections so that the private financiers of those elections don't get everything from the politicians. That makes sense. We got to make sure that we win on that goal because that's
in
the
the
thing that fixes
curve
everything else.
option. Apparently there is a path animate.
Something fascinating is afoot. Now, James Comey has come out just yesterday and said, yes, the investigation of Hillary Clinton is not some sort of inquiry. There is no such thing. It is an investigation. That's
in
what
the
we do.
curve options.
Right?
What the hell is curve
and then,
options?
All of a sudden, Hillary Clinton supporters who are in the role of cleaning up for her started appearing on TV. I'll get to that in a second. And then Biden came out, and Biden said a couple of things that really make you go, which I'll get to in a second. But first, clues started to appear from the right wing. Now, easy to dismiss those, right? But recently, for example, Boehner just said that, quote, he would not be surprised at all if Clinton has to withdraw and Biden parachutes in. Okay, easy to dismiss Judge Napolitano on Fox News and his so-called sources.
Motion
Easy to
pass.
dismiss Boehner. But I told you on this program, right after the Indiana primary, so all the way back then, because I was in Washington, and the chatter in Washington among reporters was that if Hillary Clinton gets indicted, the Democratic Party will not support Bernie Sanders, and I reported on this program who they would support, Joe Biden. Now, all of a sudden, Joe Biden's everywhere. But before we get to Biden, I want to show you Sidney Blumenthal. So let me show you the clip and then tell you who Blumenthal is.
I'm going to save it before I mess it up.
The big fear of many Democrats who I've spoken to is that Hillary Clinton will become the nominee of the Democratic Party, and then something will happen during the general. There will be some bombshell, another shoe will drop, and it will scuttle her race. How confident are you that that won't happen?
I'm very confident that that will not happen.
How do you know?
My understanding is that this is a security review. It's certainly not a criminal investigation.
But it is an investigation.
It's an inquiry into whether or not anyone intentionally put classified information where it shouldn't be. And my understanding is that they will conclude, and the Department of Justice will issue a statement at the end that that was not the case. And then all those who were involved in this kind of political hysteria will have to unravel it.
Okay, so Cameron asked a couple of good questions there. So, first of all, if you notice, she said a lot of Democrats are concerned that this is coming out. Okay, now it's one thing when Republicans are concerned. It's another thing when Democratic politicians all of a sudden are concerned because they're hearing things we're not hearing. Then secondly, she asked, how do you know? How in the world would Sidney Blumenthal know what's going on inside the FBI? And if he does, they should investigate him for that. Now, who is Sidney Blumenthal? Now, again, I know him a tiny bit here. I met him a long, long time ago, and so I'm partial to him because he was nice to me. But I know who he is. He's the cleaner. He's the guy that comes in to clean up messes. Why is the cleaner on TV? Because there's a mess coming. You don't bring out Sidney Blumenthal if you don't have any issues. They got issues, and it's coming. Okay, so now, much more important than all of that is Biden. Because now remember what they said, all the guys in the establishment, about why they were so confident there'd be no Hillary Clinton indictment. Because what they kept saying to us over and over is, oh, you guys are so naive. You see, if there's going to be an indictment, the Obama administration would know that, and what they would do is they would get Biden out there to make sure that at least that would be an option if Hillary can't keep going. And all of a sudden, here comes Biden. Watch.
No regrets? I know that before you said that you didn't run, that you knew that it was the right decision for your family. But
Look, I had planned on running. It's an awful thing to say. I think I would have been the best president, but it was the right thing, not just for my family, for me.
Okay, now that was yesterday, and John Iadarola on this show made a good point. He said, wait, why is Biden talking about how he'd be the best president? Now, I said yesterday on the program, hey, look, no big deal. Here's a guy who thinks he ran for president. Of course he thinks he would have been the best president. And I said that was an issue. Okay. But that's one data point. And the guy's doing a cancer outreach, doing the cancer moonshot. They ask him, he answers. But then, the next day, there's a news story about Joe Biden and who he would have picked as his VP. Uh-oh. Now this is interesting. Here's Here's Politico. Joe Biden took months to decide he wouldn't run for president, but he was sold on Elizabeth Warren as his running mate from the start. People familiar with the situation told Politico. Again, if you don't know how Washington works, when you want to get a story out there, you go to a reporter, Washington Post, New York Times, Politico, whoever, and you start saying things like, here's who Biden
I think you did it.
picked as his VP. Why in the world would we care who Biden would have picked as his VP if he had run? Unless that's not an if. Okay, now we've got two data points. We've got him saying I'd be the best president, and now he's telling us who his VP is. And by the way, the person that he's picking is Elizabeth Warren, who is
This is going to take a little while.
Out there. And if they wanted to put Biden in place of Hillary Clinton,
Wait, why am
well,
I
the Bernie
listening to
Sanders
this?
progressives would be super.
Oh man, I can't wait to watch this one. What is this?
Absolutely, I have regrets. I don't think I want to discuss whether. Absolutely,
Why
I could have
can't
done
I?
certain things differently. I could have maybe used different language
There we go.
in a couple of instances. But overall, I have to be very happy with the outcome. And I think if I didn't conduct myself in the way I've done it, I don't think I would have been successful. I really view myself now as somewhat of a messenger. This is a massive thing that's going on. These are millions and millions of people that have been disenfranchised from this country. I was in front of a group the other day, at least 25,000 people. The place was going crazy. And I said, I'm like the messenger. When you and I were having our little difficulty, you probably had some pretty nasty tweets sent your way. I don't want to say, but I've heard that. I don't want that to happen, but I have fans, they really love. We have an unbelievable bond. We have an
You
unbelievable
retweet some of
relationship.
those. Not just the fans.
Yeah, but not the more nasty ones. You would be amazed at the ones that don't retweet.
Bimbo?
Well, there was a retweet, yeah. Did I say that?
Many times.
Ooh, okay. Excuse me.
And this is, I like this. This is awesome. Oh, I'm on local, not global. I want global. Maybe I don't. I'm not entirely sure what I want. Ooh. This isn't good. Oh, that's my problem. Uh-oh. Alright, I kind of want to take a break from this. Okay. Shit's gonna get real, man. Bam! Right out. Come on, man. I'm almost done. I can do it. Okay, this is a pain in the butt. Okay. Shoot. Alright, where did I fix this? Alright, let's see. Oh, okay. Let's render this out, see how it goes. Video test. Alright, while I render this out, I'm gonna turn this off. Hopefully, I will have a pretty good hole or something. I don't know. Anyway, I'll be back. I might be working on my 35mm slide project for a little bit, but I'll either come back to this, the Greek mythology project, or I really need to do an introduction type animation. So I might just create the sprites for that. I'm not actually going to start the video. So I will see you guys later.